fight, look. Oh. That's so bad to fight, boy. I can't even see, boy. Turn my light up. Hold on, y'all.
On a quiet night in Orlando, an argument broke out in a place where tensions were already familiar. Voices rose, people gathered, and what began as a dispute quickly moved beyond control. Within minutes, gunfire cut through the scene.
Fuck the girl up, boy. Oh, hold up. Nah, nigga out here. Oh, they got fire?
Leaving behind confusion, silence, and questions that would never be fully answered. One life ended that night, but the circumstances surrounding it remained fragmented, shaped by partial witness accounts, limited public updates, and a rapid disappearance from headlines. What exactly happened during those moments is still unclear. Who was involved, who wasn't, and why one person never made it home are details buried beneath conflicting narratives and unfinished investigations. This is not a story told in headlines or police summaries alone. It's a case that requires reconstruction, piece by piece, to understand what was missed, what was ignored, and what still hasn't been explained. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. On the night of September 22nd, 2023, a shooting occurred at an apartment complex in Orlando, Florida. Initial reports described the incident as the result of a fight that escalated quickly. Multiple people were present, law enforcement responded, and one individual was pronounced dead. The event did not initially stand out from other late-night disturbances that local police routinely address. The time and location placed the incident among dozens of similar calls that occur weekly in the area. There were no early reports suggesting a targeted attack or a broader threat to public safety. As a result, the case received limited immediate coverage and minimal follow-up reporting. Within days, media attention shifted elsewhere. Updates became infrequent, and official information remained brief. Despite the severity of the outcome, the story faded from mainstream discussion. The lack of sustained coverage left many aspects of the case unexplored. This incident warrants closer examination not because it was unique, but because its circumstances reflect patterns that often go unexamined once headlines move on. The victim was legally identified as Michaela Queen Patterson, though she was also known publicly by the name Ruby Kia. The alternate name was used primarily on social media and in her professional work as a hairstylist. This distinction between her legal identity and online persona played a role in how she was recognized by different communities. At the time of her death, Patterson was 22 years old. She was a mother of 2 children, a responsibility that shaped much of her daily life. Those close to her described her routine as structured around childcare, work, and maintaining income through cosmetology services. Her early life has not been extensively documented in public records. Available information indicates she grew up in Florida and remained in the Orlando area into adulthood. High upbringing occurred in an environment familiar with economic pressure and limited opportunity, conditions common to many young adults navigating early independence. Patterson pursued cosmetology as both a skill and a business pathway. She trained as a hairstylist and began offering services independently. This work required long hours, client scheduling, and ongoing self-promotion. Her entry into the field coincided with increased use of social media platforms to market her work. Online, she maintained an active presence showcasing hairstyles, wigs, and personal branding. Her public persona emphasized professionalism, independence, and progress. She spoke about goals tied to expanding her business, increasing clientele, and improving stability for her children. Financial pressures were an ongoing factor. Balancing rent, childcare, and business expenses required continuous work. Her known relationships included close family members, friends, and clients, though details about her personal associations remain limited in public reporting. Patterson's online presence presented a controlled and curated image. Posts focused on completed work, self-promotion, and personal milestones. This representation reflected ambition and forward movement. Behind that public image, daily challenges persisted. Managing work as an independent stylist required flexibility and constant availability. Parenthood added further demands. Time was divided between owning income, caring for children, and maintaining visibility online. There is limited public information regarding specific conflicts in her personal life prior to the incident. No confirmed reports indicate ongoing disputes, threats, or legal issues involving Patterson. However, the absence of documentation does not equate to the absence of stresses. Like many individuals in similar circumstances, pressures related to finances, housing, and personal relationships were likely present. No verified statements suggest that she had expressed fear for her safety or plans to relocate. Publicly available information does not indicate that she anticipated immediate danger. The shooting took place at an apartment complex in Orlando known to local residents and law enforcement. The surrounding neighborhood has experienced periodic disturbances, including arguments and late-night gatherings. Police records from similar locations often reflect recurring calls related to noise complaints and altercations, though specific data tied to this complex has not been fully released. Security measures at the property appeared limited. There is no confirmation of controlled access points or on-site security personnel at the time of the incident. The complex functioned as a social gathering point for residents and visitors. People frequently congregated in outdoor areas during evening hours. These gatherings sometimes included individuals who did not reside at the property. Nighttime activity patterns at the complex involved social interaction that occasionally escalated into disputes. Such conditions increased the likelihood of confrontations developing quickly and with limited oversight. Details about Patterson's activities earlier that day remain largely private. No comprehensive timeline has been released outlining her movements hour by hour. Available information suggests she spent part of the day engaged in routine activities consistent with her responsibilities. It is unclear who she was with immediately before arriving at the apartment complex. No confirmed reports specify whether she communicated with others about plans to be there. Social media activity from that day has not been publicly analyzed in detail. Why Patterson was present at the complex remains an open question. She may have been visiting someone she knew, accompanying another individual, or present incidentally. There is no confirmation that her presence was connected to the altercation that later occurred. According to police statements, a brawl broke out involving multiple individuals. The number of participants has not been definitively stated. Witness accounts describe a verbal dispute that escalated into physical confrontation. At least one firearm was present during the altercation. How and when the weapon was introduced is unclear. Witness statements reportedly varied regarding who possessed the weapon and what actions led to shots being fired. Conflicting accounts created challenges for investigators. Some individuals present reportedly left the scene before police arrived, limiting the availability of first-hand testimony. What remains unclear is whether the altercation was planned, spontaneous, or connected to prior disagreements. Shots were fired during the height of the confrontation. The exact moment and sequence of events have not been fully reconstructed in public reports. Patterson was struck during this period. There is no indication that she was directly involved in the altercation itself. Available information suggests she may have been in close proximity when gunfire occurred. The number of shots fired has not been publicly confirmed. Immediate reactions included people fleeing the area and others calling emergency services. Law enforcement and medical responders were dispatched shortly thereafter. Police arrived and secured the area. Emergency medical personnel pronounced Patterson dead at the scene. Others involved were questioned, though no immediate arrests were announced. Evidence collected reportedly included shell casings and witness statements. Whether surveillance footage was available or reviewed has not been publicly disclosed. The extent of forensic analysis remains unclear. What stands out is the limited information released following the initial response. Details regarding suspects, charges, or investigative progress were minimal. As days passed, updates became increasingly scarce. The case entered a phase familiar in many similar incidents: officially active, publicly quiet, and largely unresolved in the public record. In the immediate aftermath of the shooting, law enforcement released a brief statement confirming that a disturbance had occurred at an Orlando apartment complex and that one individual, later identified as Michaela Queen Patterson, had died as a result of gunfire. The incident was described as stemming from a physical altercation involving multiple individuals. Police categorized the case as a homicide investigation. Early language emphasized that the shooting followed a fight, framing the event as situational rather than targeted. Officials stated that detectives were working to determine the sequence of events and identify those involved. Within the first 48 hours, updates were limited. Authorities confirmed that several people were present during the altercation and that witnesses were being interviewed. No suspect descriptions were publicly released during that initial period. No arrests were announced. As time passed, the absence of new information became more noticeable. There were no press conferences outlining investigative progress, no public clarification regarding potential suspects, and no confirmation of whether a firearm had been recovered. The case did not appear on regularly updated police blotters beyond the initial notice. There is no public record indicating that charges were filed in the weeks immediately following the shooting. If suspects were identified, that information was not disclosed. Communication with the victim's family appeared minimal from a public perspective, with no detailed statements issued regarding investigative findings or next steps. Media coverage of the case was brief and limited in scope. Initial reports focused on the basic facts: a fight, a shooting, one fatality. Headlines used generalized language such as "woman killed during apartment complex brawl," emphasizing the altercation rather than the individual involved. Few outlets provided follow-up reporting. Articles rarely included background information on Patterson beyond age and occupation. Details about the investigation were often summarized in a single paragraph, citing police statements without additional context. Certain elements received emphasis, including the presence of a fight and the location of the incident. Other aspects were largely ignored, such as who initiated the altercation, how many weapons were present, or why the case had not progressed publicly. When compared to similar cases involving different circumstances or demographics, the disparity in coverage becomes apparent. Incidents with clearer narratives or immediate arrests often receive extended reporting, interviews, and analysis. In this case, the absence of definitive answers contributed to reduced media interest. Within a short period, the story faded from news cycles. No anniversary coverage, investigative follow-ups, or in-depth reports emerged to revisit the unanswered questions. Patterson's family acknowledged her death through statements and memorials shared publicly and within their community. These acknowledgments focused on remembrance rather than details of the investigation. Vigils and tributes appeared both in person and online. Social media reactions included messages from friends, clients, and acquaintances expressing recognition of her work and role as a mother. Posts often referenced a lack of clarity surrounding the circumstances of her death. Calls for justice appeared intermittently online, though they did not coalesce into a sustained public campaign. Without regular updates from law enforcement, community efforts struggled to gain momentum. Within the broader community, frustration centered on unanswered questions. Residents and observers noted the absence of accountability and the lack of visible progress. Conversations about safety at similar apartment complexes surfaced briefly before dissipating. Several key questions remain unanswered. One of the most significant is whether Patterson was the intended target. Available information does not establish a motive directed specifically at her. Another unresolved issue is the identity of the individual who fired the fatal shot. Despite witness presence, no public identification of a shooter has been made. Accountability remains unclear due to limited transparency. It is unknown whether suspects were identified but not charged, or whether evidentiary challenges prevented further action. There is no public confirmation of prior threats, disputes, or warnings connected to Patterson. Whether the situation could have been prevented through earlier intervention, improved security, or conflict de-escalation remains speculative. The lack of detailed answers continues to define the case. As of the latest available information, the investigation remains officially open, though inactive in the public eye. No arrests or convictions have been publicly confirmed. Legal outcomes, if any occurred behind the scenes, have not been disclosed. Key details remain unavailable, including forensic findings, ballistic analysis, and the content of witness statements. Information that has not been publicly released includes surveillance footage, if it exists, and the full timeline reconstructed by investigators. Whether these omissions are due to investigative strategy or evidentiary limitations is unknown. The case appears stalled from an external perspective, with no clear indication of future developments. This case reflects broader patterns seen in similar incidents involving late-night altercations in residential complexes. Such environments often lack adequate security and are prone to rapid escalation of disputes. Systemic issues tied to housing density, limited community resources, and strained policing capacity contribute to challenges in prevention and investigation. When multiple individuals are involved and cooperation is limited, cases frequently remain unresolved. The absence of resolution carries long-term costs. Families are left without answers. Communities lose trust in accountability mechanisms, and patterns of violence persist without interruption. Unanswered cases also fade from public consciousness, reducing pressure for systemic change. This case represents more than a single night or isolated incident. It illustrates how quickly a life-ending event can be reduced to a brief headline and then overlooked. Revisiting such cases serves a purpose beyond recounting events. It highlights gaps in transparency, accountability, and attention. Bringing facts back into focus allows for examination of what was addressed, what was missed, and what remains unresolved. Even without new information, documenting and revisiting overlooked cases preserves their place in the public record. It ensures that unanswered questions remain visible rather than forgotten.